Hello class, this is Miss Jones, and today we are going to be learning about Unionists, Cooperationists, and Secessionists and their role in the Civil War. Members of the South Carolina Secession Convention in 1860 voted unanimously to secede from the Union. Now, one second, let's think about what unanimous means. That means that everyone came to a conclusion that they did not want something, and that something was Abraham Lincoln as president. But why? What did Abraham Lincoln represent? If you said 1, he was for free soil, you're correct. And if you said 2, he was a Republican, then you are also correct. They did not want a Republican candidate as their president because it threatened their livelihood, their peculiar institution, which was slavery, and they did not want it to end. Even though they voted unanimously that they wanted Abraham Lincoln out of office and they did not want a Republican candidate. However, there were some South Carolinians who strongly discouraged secession prior to the national election of 1860 in which Lincoln won. And those people were called Unionists, and they favored the idea of remaining part of the Union and staying united as a country. They did not want to separate based off different beliefs. Although Unionists did not necessarily agree with the actions of northern states, so don't get it wrong, just because they were wanting a union, it did not mean that they agreed with everything the northern states represented, nor did they agree with nationally having a federal government. They believed that the U.S. Constitution that was created by our forefathers was enough and well equipped to protect South Carolina's way of life, which was to oppose slavery. Because if you guys remember, the Dred Scott decision stated that people have the right to have just process if their property was taken or being removed. And if you're thinking about property at this time, they were talking about slavery. So the Constitution protected that right. So these Unionists did not agree with northern states or federal government. They just felt comfortable that the U.S. Constitution was enough to protect South Carolina's way of life. Cooperationists, however, were South Carolinians who favored seceding from the Union, but it was a if. It was always an if with them. Cooperationists was a group that stayed a part of the U.S. until someone leaves. If another state leaves, then we're down. If not, we're not really sure if we're for seceding. This was the last resort for them. They only felt like seceding would be good if all the southern states participated. So down here I have the emoji eyes looking, saying, hey, I'll leave when y'all leave. But other than that, they were not happy with just leaving the Union by themselves, as in South Carolina by themselves. They wanted all southern states to coincide with them with leaving the Union so they could be stronger, they could have more resources. So it sounds better than just them just skedaddling and leaving the Union and not having any kind of protection. They wanted to have a system, and they refused to leave, and it was the very last thing on their mind until all southern states wanted to leave too. They really honestly believed that it was going to be a huge mistake if South Carolina left without the cooperation of the other southern states. So as the picture at the bottom shows you, it says if we don't stick together, we will fail. And that was what cooperationists really felt. They did not feel secure with South Carolina just seceding alone. Now, on the other hand, we have the secessionists. They were known as radicals or fire eaters because they argued extremely that breaking apart from the Union was the only answer for South Carolina. They were not having anything else. They didn't want to listen to anything the Cooperationists said. Hey, we should wait till South Carolina and Georgia and Florida and Alabama leave. They're like, nope. We want to leave now. This is the only answer for South Carolina. They're not listening to the Unionists who are saying, hey, let's sit together as a union. The Constitution is good enough to protect us. They're like, nope, we're not sticking with the Union because Abraham Lincoln is president. We want to secede. We're leaving. We're not listening. This is it. Finished. They honestly felt like it was non-debatable. And it has already been that way since as early as 1852 because of other issues. And you see the picture down here shows the master dabbing because they're extremely excited that South Carolina seceded from the Union. So here's a list of events that made the South believe that leaving the Union was mandatory. And this is the Secessionists, the fire eaters that I'm speaking of. Now let's go back because we know all of these things. Think about the Compromise of 1850. Alright? California comes in as a free state. They abolish the slave trade in Washington, D.C. Then we have the Uncle Tom's Cabin. I'm sorry, with 1850, we also had the fugitive slave law that was intact with that too. But here we have the Uncle Tom's Cabin that comes out and talks about the horrors of slavery. And so the South is getting more upset about that. And if you look at the picture down there, it says, what a terrible, cruel system these awful slaveholders have. And so the people in the South are being depicted as animals. So it's just building up more and more tension. Then we have the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where they had popular sovereignty introduced and the citizens being able to have the right to vote if they wanted to be a free state or a slave state, which caused a lot of tension. If you guys remember Bleeding Kansas and all the abolitionists and slave owners that rushed here to these states so that they can have the able to vote for them to be free or slave states. And then on top of that, it led to the formation of the Republican parties, which came from the Free Soul Party and the Liberty Party. Both are two groups that was highly against slavery. Then in 1857, we had the Dred Scott decision. With that decision, the South was happy. They felt more secure with the federal government and the Supreme Court decision saying that slaves were property and they could not just go to any state and be free. So the fugitive slave laws that was created are in place everywhere, and they don't really need to have a place because now if you escape to a free state, you will always be captured. You will always be the property of your master. So the South was happy about that. But in 1858, we have Lincoln coming in. He's getting more popular, and he's speaking about everything that they're against. He's talking about free soul and having free labor for the free whites and letting them work and creating in the economy. And they don't want to hear that. They say we have workers here. We have free workers, which we can make all 100% profit. Then we have 1859, Harper's Ferry, John Brown's raid. Now, that makes the Southerners fear more so of what they're going through and their livelihood. They're saying, okay, we have slave revolts, but now we have to worry about abolitionists and them trying to attack us as well. Then, what tops the cake is the election of 1860 when Lincoln is elected president. Once again, he's a Republican free solar and they're not having it. And immediately, if you look down below, South Carolina tucks the deuces and they leave immediately. They secede. Then in 1861, the Southern states form a confederacy. And we'll get there soon and know that the Civil War is starting. So all of those events of the 1850s and the election in 1860 of Lincoln convinced most South Carolinians to support the position of the fire eaters. They just said, you know what? All these things led up to us having to secede. If we don't secede, our way of life will come to an end. So the Union is dissolved. The Union ends, South Carolina leaves, and so the 6 other states. What now? I want you guys to go ahead and answer your homework questions 50 to 52. And once you get done, raise your hand. I'll be around to check that for you. I hope you guys understood the lesson thoroughly. If not, please feel free to email me or to call me over to your desk if you're still in class and I can help you out. All right.